Welcome back, everybody, to episode 12 of the CG Sports Podcast. Today, we're doing our third weekly news episode, so let's get straight into it with some NFL news. Starting off with Steelers QB Ben Roethlisberger. He stated just a couple days ago that he injured both of his knees in Sunday's game against the Cowboys. He was also recently put onto the Steelers' COVID reserve list. Steelers organization has said that his knees are not going to be a problem, but we are going to have to see if he tests negative for the virus before Sunday. Another Steeler as well, Vance McDonald, was also put on the COVID reserve list. He has the same situation as Big Ben, where we're just going to have to see if he tests negative before Sunday. Next up, I want to talk about Cowboys rookie cornerback Trevon Diggs. He suffered a fractured bone in his foot, and he is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. I think this is going to be a big loss for the Cowboys. Obviously, he's only a rookie, but he has had a pretty good first half of the season for the most part. I mean, the Cowboys season is basically over at this point anyways, but I think he would have helped them out just a little bit. Next up, we got another injured player in Ravens defensive tackle Calais Campbell, who is also going to be out multiple weeks with a calf strain. He's a big part of their defense. He's the guy who's always putting all that QB pressure on, and we're just going to have to see how this impacts the team through the next few weeks. Next up, we're going to talk about another Cowboys executive, Jerry Jones. He was asked about the idea of drafting a quarterback in next year's draft. He stated that Dak is our quarterback. Dak, of course, had a gruesome injury, and there are many questions of if he's going to return the same as he was prior. So I guess we're just going to have to see how that goes, with this whole recovery process. They don't expect him back this season. They do expect him to come back next season, and we'll just have to see if he comes back the same player he was. Next up, we're going to talk about Christian McCaffrey. He will be out this Sunday with a shoulder injury. He just returned with a 2-touchdown performance against the Chiefs. They obviously lost, but he still had a pretty solid game. He's not going to play this Sunday, but he is hopeful to return for Week 11. Next, we're going to talk about Washington football team QB Kyle Allen. He is set to undergo season-ending ankle surgery tomorrow. Allen was the starter the past few weeks, but was carted off against the Giants, and he's not going to be out for the rest of the season. Now for some, I guess you could say, less important news. The Jets are officially 0-9 for the first time in franchise history, and all I got to say for this is they should really be disappointed because their team is not this bad to where they should be 0-9, and I'd really be surprised if they won a single game this season, so we'll see how that goes. Next up, we're going to talk about the Bengals claiming Takk McKinley off the waivers. Of course, he was in Atlanta. He wanted to be traded at the deadline, and when they didn't, he straight up said he was going to refuse to play, and he was released. He really is a solid defensive end. He can get some pressure, play coverage if he has to, and just a presence on any defense, and I think he's going to have a major impact on the Bengals and maybe give them some new life. Next up, the Browns have officially activated Baker Mayfield from their COVID reserve. He tested positive just about 4 or 5 days ago, and he's going to be a huge help for them, I'm sure, if he does come back, which right now he's expected to, and he will play Sunday most likely against the Texans. Next up, we've got Ravens cornerback Marlon Humphrey, who was also just activated from the COVID reserve. He's going to be another huge help to their defense. And I think without Calais Campbell, they really need to bring this guy back. And he will play on Sunday night against the Patriots. Next up, we're going to talk about the 49ers. And they expect their cornerback Richard Sherman to return for Week 10 against the Saints. I'm sure, as I say with everyone else, this is going to be a big help for them. He's a key veteran piece on their defense, kind of an all-around leader. And with how good New Orleans has looked in their passing game, I'm sure Sherman will be a major help. Next up, the Dolphins have recently placed linebacker Kyle Van Noy on their COVID reserve. We are still unsure if he's going to play Sunday, but from what we've seen, he's been a big part of their defense. Great tackler, great coverage guy, decent speed, great IQ as a linebacker. So we're just going to have to see how that goes. I think he will play Sunday, though, unless some crazy thing happens. But I think he's had about 3 or 4 days to get healthy again. I think he's going to play on Sunday. That's going to do it for our NFL news, so let's get into our NBA news. Starting off with some NBA draft news, Anthony Edwards has apparently disappointed at the NBA Draft Pro Day. A lot of teams have said they feel somewhat discouraged. Edwards says he wants to be drafted number 1, but I think his odds have severely dropped after his performance at the Pro Day. The assumption now can only be that LaMelo Ball will go number 1, whether the Timberwolves draft him or another team decides to move up to select him. Next up, we're going to talk about Chauncey Billups, who will be joining Tyronn Lue's staff with the Clippers as an assistant coach. Billups, of course, known for his time as a point guard with both the Pistons and the Nuggets, a multiple-time All-Star, and a NBA champion in 2004. I think he's going to be a great addition to their staff, great knowledgeable player, and a more recent player. So he's a little bit more used to the new standard of the NBA where you know how important the 3-ball is, things like that. He's a bit more adapted to it than other assistant coaches, I believe. Next up, we're going to talk about Tim Duncan, of course, a Spurs legend, 5 championships, and the greatest power forward of all time, in my opinion. He will be stepping away from his coaching job with the Spurs. He was working on Greg Popovich's staff. Not much is known as to why he did this. My assumption is he doesn't want to risk catching the virus and hurting his family. So I think that would make sense. Next up, we've got some Russell Westbrook news. Russell Westbrook has stated that he wants out of Houston after just 1 season. Some teams that were showing interest are the Lakers, who I think would be a pretty good fit. Obviously, he could fit in right there with LeBron, AD, and all them. They could use a really good point guard, as you know they've had Rondo, who isn't bad, but the other teams they have are the Clippers, who I think would be another great fit for him if he joined up with Kawhi, Paul George, if they could keep him there. I think those would work well too. The next option I really don't get, and it's the Atlanta Hawks. I don't get that. They have Trae Young. He's their point guard of the future, unless you're planning on starting Westbrook at the shooting guard. But Trae Young's the primary ball handler anyways. Do you want to give up his leadership role on this team by bringing in another guy? That one really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Same thing with the Hornets. I mean, they're another team that's looking to pick him up. They have Devontae Graham. They have Malik Monk. They have some young guys. I don't see why you would want to bring Westbrook onto that team either. The next team, and I think this one actually makes sense, is the Pistons. They have Blake Griffin, who's a great player. Lost Drummond, of course, last season. I think Westbrook would be a great addition to this team. Gets the ball around. You know, they have some good shooters on that team, and I think he would be a great addition to them. And finally, the team that I think has the best odds to get Russell Westbrook, the New York Knicks. Of course, they have a pretty high draft pick this year. I think they might move up to number 1 to get LaMelo. If they do, him and Westbrook, I feel would be a great combination. If Melo could really take the role of a spot-up shooter or, you know, just less of a ball handler, I think they could work great together. Westbrook's former teammate, or maybe soon-to-be future teammate, depending on what he does, James Harden, has stated that he is still committed to the Rockets and plans to stay there. I like this, but I'm a little suspect of it because he gave his top 5 landing spots, which was very weird to me. Why would you give your top 5, other teams you would want to go to if you're saying you're committed to Houston? I think he wants out. I think he's going to get traded. So we'll see how that goes. Another free agent, Tristan Thompson, has received interest from the Lakers, Clippers, and Raptors. All of these teams I feel could be fits for him. He could be a great bench center on all these teams, and he's just, as we know, a great rebounder, decent defender. So I think this is going to be another interesting free agent to see where he winds up for next season. Now that we're on the topic of free agency, the NBA has officially decided free agency is going to start on November 20th at 6 p.m. with signing starting on November 22nd at midnight. So mark your calendars. That's when all the big stuff's going to start going down. Next up, we're going to talk about Lakers small forward Kyle Kuzma. He has stated that he is seeking a sizable contract extension from the Lakers. I don't think he's going to get his wish, as we all know he wasn't very productive last season. Only time will tell, though. The Lakers might want to keep him there, but I don't see any way he's getting a big contract extension. He might get resigned, but not with some big contract like he's looking for. Next up, we're going to talk about the Orlando Magic, who have showed some interest in trading Aaron Gordon and shopping him for, obviously, whatever they want. And no interest has been shown by any teams just yet, but this came out really recently, so we haven't really seen any teams, look to offer any trades just yet. But I'm sure we'll hear some news about that soon. We're going to end off our NBA news with some news about Chris Paul. He has stated that he is intrigued by the idea of pairing with Giannis in Milwaukee. I think they'd be a great combination. Chris Paul, Chris Middleton, and Giannis. I think that would be a great big three there and a team that could really do some damage in the Eastern Conference. The Thunder, of course, have said otherwise. They say they're looking to trade him to the Suns, where he would join Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Another great trade for Chris Paul as well. Either way, he would be matching up with some great players, but there is still the chance that he gets stuck in OKC, which would suck. And of course, even with the Milwaukee deal, Giannis has clearly stated that he's not happy in Milwaukee. He wants to go to the Heat, and the Mavericks want him too. So maybe bringing in Chris Paul will help secure him in Milwaukee. But I can't wait to see if a deal gets made and where CP3 or Giannis end up. That's going to do it for our NBA news. We're going to talk about some famous birthdays for basketball. Starting off with Russell Westbrook, who we've spoken a lot about. He turned 32 today. He's the first player to average a triple-double for an entire season. Super athletic, great player, drafted in 08, UCLA. All around an amazing player, and happy birthday to him. And our other player is going to be Trey Burke, who turned 28 today. He played his college ball at Michigan. He's currently a bench player for the Mavs. Great shooter, had his decent outing with the Sixers, and just all around a great point guard, good passer, good shooter, no real weaknesses. So happy birthday to him. He turned 28. We're now going to talk about our This Day in Sports History. This day in sports history goes back to 2008 when Devin Hester tied the record for the longest play in NFL history, returning a missed field goal 108 yards for a touchdown against the Giants. Finally, to finish off this episode, we're going to do a quick review of last week's predictions. To put it simply, we went 11-3 on picks. The only game we have to talk about this week is the Saints win over the Bucks. Of course, I took the Bucks. This game was just horrendous. Great game for the Saints defense. Brady and his offense. He had all those guys out there. Antonio Brown making his return to the league. Of course, Gronk, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, all these guys still playing. And the Saints defense locked them up. They only scored 3 points in like the last 6 minutes of the game, 5 minutes, somewhere around there. Their offense could not get going. Phenomenal performance by Drew Brees, thrown for 4 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara, I believe, had over 100 yards and a touchdown for himself. This was just a blowout win for the Saints, 38-3. So all around a great game for Drew Brees, and we'll see what this makes of it because I feel like this is a big statement game for them. A lot of people thought, Brady's got some more guys now. He was going to get his revenge from week 1, and it just didn't work out. So I think it'll be interesting. These are two teams that are expected to make the playoffs. Maybe they will match up. So we're just going to have to see where they go from there. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for our Week 10 predictions, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.